But you can't take it further. If you want to see that, if I take the proportions and I calculate, you can't really calculate risk out of that the way we calculate in a cohort in a relative risk. Kiran, this is for you, bete. Since you have asked that question, see if you
जी
have
मैम.
taken if you have taken that proportion in a case control study, bete, what we said in that. That was that are our cases. Let me just let the participants in who are waiting. Who are the ones who are waiting? Let me just okay. See, there are cases and they are your controls, right? Sorry. Let me just okay. Now see here what they did is A, B, C, and D, and they just went into the proportions. Now, see, that would be the proportion of exposure among cases if you just take it as A over A plus C, right? But we need to calculate, or somebody, they might have asked you, A over A plus C is basically the proportion of exposure, sorry, the proportion of exposure among cases, right? Now, this is basically the probability of having exposure. So, if you get this much, if they say that if you go that this was 56%, right? So, what will be the probability of having non exposure among cases? That would be 100 minus B. That would be C. ठीक है बेटे?
जी मैम, समझ आ गया मुझे. अब ये
That
इंडिविजुअल हमने इसको
yes.
टोटल
So
किया था.
yeah, that would be 56 over 44.
जी मैम, ठीक है.
This is just to because if you have one proportion, so you can very easily get the other one. Similarly, if you have the proportion, if I can take you back to that, now I got your confusion that where you people might be confused. Let me just take you. The proportions that were calculated for was just to show you. You will bit. I think that this one.
जी जी
This
मैम,
one.
ये जिसमें
This one.
60% वाला.
Yeah, 56%. So this is among those smokers. So if you have to take it of non-smokers, that would be 100 minus 56. That would be 44. And if you take this, that would be 44 divided by among non-smokers control. So if you take a cross product ratio of that, that will give you a odds ratio for a case control study, right?
जी मैम, आ
This is
गई.
how, this is how we can make use of these proportions that have been calculated. Just to take that P, if this P is known to you, 1 minus P you can always calculate for this C and here for D. And you can calculate your odds ratio, right? Yeah. G, Simon, G please.
मैम इट्स बेसिकली डिपेंड अपॉन आवर स्टडी डिजाइन कि हम कौन सा वाले को चूज करते हैं.
Absolutely. But once you will go into your, if you go into literature and you see that in cohort study designs, generally relative risk, but there are certain, papers, because I told you that in cohort study design, relative risk and odds ratio both can be calculated. So we have multiple tests available. Once you will study, inshallah, SPSS in your second semester, you will see that odds ratios they are calculated, and there is one more factor that is dependent on that. That is the nature of your dependent variable that you want to calculate. I'm sure you must have studied data types in your biostatistics, the quantitative data types and qualitative data types. So if it's a
Yes, ma'am.
qualitative data type and you are taking your results in the form of proportions and percentages, so generally we make use of odds ratio for its calculation. And if it's your continuous data means, your logistic regression analysis that you will learn, so generally you will get odds ratio. Or if it's a continuous quantitative variable, you will be getting your correlation measure, in which you'll be taking your R values that you will learn, inshallah, in your second semester. And I'm sure Dr. Aisha will also touch upon these measures of association in chi-square and in correlation. So you will learn that. So we'll all do that. The practicality or the practical application of all this will be in your third semester. Once you'll be done with your basic concepts of epi bio and applied epi bio in your second semester. So we'll definitely, inshallah, will be coming up.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, so we were here in cases and control. I told you that there are two possible options that we can have for controls, that either they are exposed or either they are non-exposed. Similarly, if we just compare our cases in context to controls, so they are either exposed or either they are non-exposed. So if we just compare them in accordance with each other, that if we look into their status, that how many of them they are exposed, and we look for their paired analysis, right? So we call it as matching. So I told you one thing in the beginning, once we were talking about making comparisons. I told you that there are certain things which are done to ensure comparability among groups. Whenever you are choosing two different groups for investigation or for your research or study design, the way we have seen that cohorts and your control groups, and similarly, we have seen cases and controls also. So, one of the biggest factor that we need to keep in our mind in case control study is that we need to match our cases with controls in regard to certain pertinent risk factors, or in regard to certain confounding factors. Now, what are those confounding factors which are generally labeled as age, gender, socioeconomic status, education, some sort of genetic background, or genetic matching? At times, it's also been done if you choose your controls from within the family, or from within the household. At times, spouse is also taken as a control, or your immediate family members, they are taken as controls, right? But all that matching is done to avoid the confounding factors. Now, confounding variable or confounders, we'll be having a full-fledged session on confounders and confounding. Is a variable that is associated, that is linked with both groups, with an exposed group, with a disease group, and with a control group also, okay? Or that might distort our results. Remember, confounder is a factor that leads to spurious or unrealistic, unreal associations or false associations, or it is linked with both of the groups. Either it's the exposed group and the control group, or either it's the case group or the control group. So far, you remember this much, that, and I told you that age is one of the biggest confounders. If you have not matched your groups with respect to age, so that is going to confound your results. Obviously, we know that certain risk factors or certain diseases are more prevalent with certain age group as compared to the other age group. So age is one of the biggest. So I told you that whenever we have to make groups comparable, there are certain options that we have. That is, we did talk about standardization. I'm sure by now you all must be familiar that we can go for standardization. We can always make use of standard nomenclature, standard definition. You choose one criteria, you operationalize the selection criteria, that okay, whom I'm going to select as a case. Anybody who is in this particular stage of illness, anyone who has this particular age bracket, who falls in this particular age bracket, or at times gender, if it's specific to certain gender, male or female group, we specify gender also. So all these particular factors we try to match sorry, we try to match with regard to certain, factors that might otherwise confound our results. So all these possible things we try to control before the start of the study. So that is your matching. We try to match our controls with respect to cases, with respect to certain factors that can otherwise distort our results or can affect the reliability of our study. Okay. So that is what is basically your matching that is generally done, or that should be done in a case control study. But it is very very tedious, and people it takes lot of effort. So that's why generally people go for simple case control studies, and they don't really bother a lot to go into that matching and all that. But if there is a matched case control study, so we intend to have an odds ratio whose formula is somewhat different from the formula that we were taking in our unmatched odds ratio. So I told you that in a matched case control study, A and D are concordant cells. This means that A and D are not going to create any difference to our association, because in A, controls and cases, they are both same, they are similar, right? Controls are also exposed and cases are also exposed, isn't it? But what is our hypothesis? Our hypothesis is that cases are more exposed, or they might be more exposed as compared to controls, isn't it? So, for looking into this hypothesis that we have postulated, which two different cells that we are left with, they are B and C, that can give us some answer. So, the formula that is generated for a matched odds ratio is, I'll put a little m in the bottom of that odds ratio, that is going to be B over C, right? B over C is the formula that is going to give us answer as far as the exposure status, or as far as our hypothesis being a researcher is concerned, because we are expecting that probably cases are more exposed as compared to controls. So till the time we have not matched our cases and controls, and till the time we have not taken these two dichotomous cells, this discordant cells B and C, they are going to provide you that information. Okay? Clear, all of you?
Yes, ma'am.
So that is what is going to be the basis behind your matched case control study. And if you just go into that, this detail is also written with you. So I think I'll take a start in the next meeting from here, because I can see that we are left with a few of the students and our time is also up. So any questions so far? Anything that is not clear to you? You may ask. Any comment, anything? All my passionate and determined 18 students, they are all with
Ma'am,
me.
please do share the recording, because there was some slightly disconnection in the internet today. So,
Okay, definitely. Last time I just shared right after finishing my session, I shared my recordings with the group.
thank you, ma'am, and please do share it, ma'am. Thank you.
Sure, definitely. I'll be sharing it, and I'll be, taking it further from where we left today in the next meeting. So, if there are no further questions, so this is the time to say Allah Hafiz. No further questions? No more questions? Or you are all tired
No,
now?
ma'am.
Yes, no, ma'am. काफी है. No, ma'am.
Okay, fine.
मैम एपी के मैम एक क्वेश्चन है.
जी, fine. Otherwise,
मैम
before
एपी
that,
के इंटरनल मार्क्स.
yeah, thank you so much for your patient listening, all of you. And Beta, I told
Ma'am,
you.
are you able to listen me?
Yeah, I'm able to hear that, and